May 2019, 2058-21. 1. Choose any two of the following hadiths, and a. Describe their teaching about what Muslims believe, and 4. b. Explain how Muslims can put these teachings into action. 4. ANS, A. Teachings. 1. This hadith broadens the definition of charity sadaqah by referring to some ordinary acts that do not involve spending money. Instead, they are related to utilizing the physical energies to help those in need. The Prophet promised reward of charity if Muslims make peace between fellow Muslims in a just way, help lift the luggage of a weak person and speak kindly. Same reward is promised for Muslims who walk to the mosque for daily prayers or who remove any harmful thing from the road. Thus the hadith teaches Muslims understand the wider meaning of charity, and God's generosity who may give unusual reward for many ordinary deeds. This also means that the acts of worship are not restricted to salat and sawm, but they extend to taking care of others. It instructs them to acknowledge God's bounty of good health by using it for the comfort of others. Another hadith mentions the reward of helping others as, whoever relieves a believer's distress of the distressful aspects of this world, God will rescue him from a difficulty of the difficulties of the hereafter. 2. This hadith describes the basis of man's connection with God. It teaches that God is not concerned with a believer's socio-economic status, physical power, intelligence, and beauty because these were predestined by himself. Therefore, the sole criterion of a Muslim's superiority over the other is taqwa or righteousness. Regarding this, the Quran says, "Verily the noblest among you in the sight of God is the most righteous of you." 49:13, Al-Hujurat. The second part of the hadith clearly states God is concerned with the intentions and deeds of the believers. True believers, therefore, are always grateful to him for his blessings, and try to be his pious servants. They believe that God rewards all deeds according to the intentions behind them. So, they try to keep their intentions pure. 3. Islam stands for the establishment of a community based on its moral principles. Modesty is the focal point of morality that, in turn, is dependent on genuine faith. Therefore, a hadith highlights this relationship as, modesty and faith are both companions, when one of them is absent the other follows it. Modesty refers to humbleness, simplicity, not being ostentatious, and a strong belief in God's consciousness. Its meaning extends to a sense of being part of a distinct community. Thus the Muslims observing it put the interests of community before their individual desires. Thus it keeps them from committing any shameful and antisocial acts, and motivates them to repent and feel ashamed if they do anything wrong. Such a feeling of regret originates from a belief of God's omniscience on one hand, and being noticed by fellow members of the community, on the other. Modesty trains Muslims to be kind and generous towards each other both materially and morally. 4. This hadith proves universality of Islamic teachings by linking Haqq ul-Ibad rights of the people with Haqq Allah rights of God. It highlights an important fact that Islam is not all about the 5 pillars, but its teachings extend to all social and economic aspects, too. It expects from its followers to establish social equilibrium and collective welfare in the Muslim community. The Quran tells Muslims that God Almighty has fixed a share for the poor in the wealth of the rich people, and in their wealth there was a rightful share for the beggar and the destitute. 51:19, Al-Dariyat. The Prophet has stressed on the importance of looking after the poor and the widow in a Muslim community. He promised rewards of jihad, salat, and sawm fasting for those who help such needy persons as well as others who deserve moral and material aid. Thus the believers have their duties towards God, and duties towards their fellow beings. By striking a balance between the two, they can expect multiple reward from God, who will consider their noble deeds as a form of worship and a kind of active struggle in his way. B. Teachings into action. 1. Muslims can fulfill their social responsibilities in a number of ways. They should hurry to help carry a heavy luggage of an elderly person on a railway station or airport. If they can afford, they should give a ride to the needy people to a mosque, school or workplace, and guide a stranger in their town to his destination. They should feed a hungry person and take initiative in extending greetings to others regardless of the social status and age of the person, as instructed by the Prophet in another hadith, give food and greetings to those you know and those you do not know. They should speak cordially even if they are addressed in a rather harsh way, and give a good advice whenever asked for. They should remove any harmful thing from the thoroughfare, like a banana skin, a nail or any sharp-edged objects. 2. Muslims should do all good deeds with a pure intention of earning God's goodwill and pleasure. They should not offer regular prayer or give charity with the intention of being noticed by others. The Quran strictly forbids such an attitude, so woe to those who pray. Those who just want to be seen. 107:4-5, Al-Mayun. The Prophet instructed Muslims to give charity in such a way that the left hand of the giver does not know what the right hand is giving. He appointed Hazrat Bilal as the first muezzin of Islam despite his low worldly status. He was given this honor in recognition of his faith and dedication to Islam. Doing any good deed with the intention of showing off kills the spirit of that deed and becomes an act of hypocrisy. Muslims should not flatter the public office holders in order to get closer to them or get some benefits from them. This will lower their grace in the sight of God. 3. Modesty can be practiced by adopting a moderate way of living and avoiding extremism. This moderation should reflect from their speech, dress, style of walk and behavior towards others. Muslims should try to adopt a simple and humble way of living, as this will encourage them to help those around them without thinking themselves above others. Humbleness is loved by God and so is a source of getting closer to Him. Muslim men and women are commanded by the Quran to follow modesty and tell the believing men that they should lower their gaze and guard their modesty, and tell the believing women that they should lower their gaze and guard their modesty. 24:30-31 Al-Nur. These verses sum up the essence of Islamic teachings about modesty. 4. Muslims should not only observe the rituals of Salat and Sawm, but should also be generous towards the needy members of their community. They should give charity to the charity organizations that operate to provide education, healthcare, and housing to the poor. There are philanthropic organizations that have started building shelter homes and providing daily meals. God guarantees huge rewards for such generous believers in the Quran. The parable of those who spend their possessions for the sake of God is that of a grain out of which grow 7 ears, in every ear 100 grains. 2:261, Al-Baqarah. They should follow the example of the Prophet who married widow women in order to rehabilitate them. They can be taught some skills and given financial aid with the intention of making them self-dependent. The core objective should be to make such poor people assets of the community, not just a liability. 2a. Give a detailed account of the checks made on the text and narrators of hadiths. 10b. In your opinion, what are the main advantages of carrying out checks to confirm the reliability of hadiths? 4. A. The 6 major collectors of hadith, the muhaddithin, utilized special tools to check the authenticity of each hadith before incorporating the same in their final compilations. These collectors were Imam Bukhari, Imam Muslim, Imam Tirmizi, Abu Dawud, Ibn Majah, and Nasai. These scholarly people checked the main body text, matn, and the chain of transmitters, isnad, plural of sanad or first reporter of each hadith very carefully. Thus, they were able to select only the genuine, sahih, hadith in their compilations. The text, matn, of each hadith was required to be in accordance with the teachings of the Quran and Sunnah, in the Arabic language of the age of the Prophet, in a simple expression and in no way mention anything against the status and dignity of the Prophet and his family. It should also not be in clash with other ahadith already accepted as authentic. It should not contradict the normal experience of the people or the laws of nature. Matn should not contain details about any incidents that took place after the Prophet's demise, nor should it mention praise of some particular individual, place or community, tribe, except for the ahadith mentioning the Prophet's special love for the closest relatives. E.G. or libate, and companions. Finally, the matan should not describe unusual rewards for ordinary deeds. Similarly, the chain of narrators, sanad isnad, was checked thoroughly. Sanad literally means authority or support because each hadith had been transmitted from one to the next generation on the authority of transmitters. So a number of narrators will constitute a chain called isnad, many reporters or sanads. This chain could be short with 2 or 3 narrators or could comprise as many as 6 or more transmitters. It starts from a companion who then reported it to his disciple who in turn narrated the same to the next in the chain and so on. The great authority on Islamic law, Imam al-Shafi'i, laid down rules to check the chain of transmitters. The chain of each hadith, starting from one of the major collectors, should always end on a companion. It should be totally uninterrupted and continuous. Dates of birth and death of all consecutive transmitters should overlap, i.e., each of the narrators should have been familiar with the previous and the next transmitter. Moreover, there were strict criteria regarding the memory and conduct of each narrator in the chain. For example, Imam Bukhari's memory was repeatedly tested. Once in Baghdad, the people chose 100 different hadiths and changed the sequence of the reporters as well as texts of the hadiths and recited them before Imam Bukhari. After hearing all these hadiths, he repeated each hadith with absolutely correct matan and isnad. He had memorized 2,000 traditions in his childhood. Being a very rich man, he traveled extensively and visited almost all the centers of Islam in the Muslim world from Central Asia to the Middle East. All reporters were required to have command on the Arabic language, Quran, hadith, and fiqh, legal thinking. Each narrator should enjoy the repute of a pious scholar who should not have told a lie even as a matter of joke. He should not have committed any major sin. In this regard too, Imam Bukhari excelled all other collectors of hadith. Before conducting work on hadith, he would always take a bath and pray to God by offering 2 rakat of nafil prayer. Once a friend of Bukhari gave him a handsome amount of money to be conveyed to another friend who lived on the other bank of the river. When Bukhari boarded the ship, another person who had witnessed the scene closely also boarded. He made a plan to get that money illegally. So when the ship was in the middle of the river, that man raised an alarm saying that his money had been stolen. The sailor of the ship stopped and announced that every passenger would be bodily searched to settle the issue. When Bukhari came to know about this, he threw the money in the river and decided to bear the damages instead of being implicated in a false case of theft, though he knew he would be acquitted in the end. He did not risk his repute at all. This shows how careful these muhaddithin had been in their mission. As a result, only genuine hadiths were included in their collections called al-Sahah, al-Sitta, the 6 authoritative books. Imam Bukhari shortlisted 7397 hadiths from the initial total of 600,000 hadiths. About 5,000 of these are repeated ones. B. The 6 major collectors worked in the light of this hadith. It is enough falsehood for someone to speak of everything he hears. So, the checks made by them on each hadith were aimed at sorting out the reliable ahadith from a huge stock of various types of hadith. Their laborious task resulted in the classification of hadith into Sahih, Hasan, Da'if, and Mawdu types. This significantly helped the legal experts to make accurate laws for the guidance of ordinary Muslims. Sahih ahadith never contradict the Quranic injunctions, and thus the real image of Islam and the Prophet was highlighted. This strengthened the link between faith and practice of Muslims. The cumulative effect of all these was unity among the Muslims, as they all are agreed that genuine ahadith are the best means of understanding the Quran as well as the Sunnah of the Prophet. 3a. Outline the reasons for the unrest against Uthman and write an account of the rebellion in Medina that led to his martyrdom. 10b. Umar and Uthman stood by what they believed to be just and were martyred for the position they took. What lessons can be learnt from their martyrdom? Give reasons for your answer. 4. ANS, A. Hazrat Uthman faced serious troubles from 651 AD to 656 AD. Hazrat Uthman expanded the Muslim empire towards very remote territories but faced many serious problems that escalated to his martyrdom. Many people believe that the mishap of accidental falling of his ring in the Arish well, in 651 AD, marked the start of troubles for him. It was the signet ring of the Holy Prophet. However, this is a debatable issue as there were other reasons for revolt against him. He was accused of favoring his kinsmen as he appointed his close relatives on key posts. Walid bin Akbar, a close relative of the Caliph, was first appointed as governor of Kufa, but was soon replaced by another relative, Sa'id bin al-Ayaz. Abdullah bin Amir was appointed governor of Basra. They were competent but happened to be the sons-in-law of the Caliph. Abdullah bin Abi Sarah was appointed governor of Egypt, while Muawiyah was given a larger territory of Syria to govern. The Caliph's secretary, Marwan bin al-Hakam, was also from his family. Despite the competence of all these, the people in general criticized the Caliph as he extended more favors to them. They were allowed to draw loans from the Bayt-ul-Mal and amass funds collected from their provinces. Many people blamed the Caliph that he spent the public money on his relatives. When complaints were brought to him against any of these governors, he would show unusual lenience towards them. He was accused of not keeping a strict check on his governors. This added to his growing unpopularity. He allowed the Arabs to acquire lands in the conquered areas, while the previous caliphs had banned this. This step intensified hostility between the Arabs and the local inhabitants. Another allegation against him was that he used the state pastures for his own use and restricted the people from using them. In fact, as the executive head of the state, it was his duty to supervise and maintain the state pastures, and this tradition was introduced by the previous two caliphs. Similarly, when Hazrat Uthman enlarged the court around the Kaaba in 647 AD, many houses were demolished. Though the owners were paid the compensation, they joined the rebels against him. Hazrat Uthman prepared the copies of the original script, Mushaf-i-Hafsa, after receiving reports of disputes among the new converts over various dialects of recitation of the Quran. Then he ordered burning the disputed copies of the Quran with the noble intention of avoiding disunity among Muslims. However, this step was seen by the people as an insult of the Holy Book. Abdullah bin Saba, a Jewish hypocrite from Yemen, launched a campaign against the Caliph. He exploited Hazrat Ali's name and status to instigate people against the Caliph. Expelled from Kufa, Basra, and Syria, he eventually established his headquarters in Egypt. The Caliph never took any strict action against him, and Ibn Saba continued to make matters worse for Hazrat Uthman. In 656 AD, the rebels against the Caliph drafted a plan to get rid of him. 3 groups of armed rebels left Kufa, Basra, and Fustat for Medina on the pretext of pilgrimage to Mecca. They made separate bases in Medina, and this greatly shocked the people of Medina. The rebels sent delegations to the 3 most respected advisors of the Caliph, Hazrat Ali, Talha, and Zubair. These companions responded harshly and refused to cooperate with them against the Caliph. As the deadlock prolonged, Hazrat Ali, acting as the intermediary, advised the Caliph to remove the most unpopular governor of Egypt, Abdullah bin Abi Sarah. This, in Hazrat Ali's opinion, might satisfy the rebels and reduce the problems of the Caliph. The Caliph reluctantly agreed and the rebels returned to their cities. 3 days into their march to Fustat, the rebels captured a slave of the Caliph who was carrying a letter to the Egyptian governor. The letter, with a fresh seal of the Caliph's office, contained orders for the governor to kill the rebels on their arrival in Egypt. Feeling furious, the rebels turned back to Medina, and soon were joined by those from Kufa and Basra. In the presence of Hazrat Ali, the Caliph denied any knowledge of the letter, though he admitted the ownership of the slave who carried the letter. The predicament of the Caliph prepared the ground for the accomplishment of the ugly mission of the rebels. The Caliph promised to address their grievances, but it was too late. Hazrat Ali, Talha and Zubair sent their sons to guard the caliph's house. The rebels received the news of an elite force sent by Muawiyah that was around 120 kilometers from Medina, and decided to act quickly. They besieged the house of the caliph and attacked. Hassan bin Ali and Muhammad bin Talha bravely defended. Marwan's troops also tried to save the caliph. Hazrat Uthman asked all to leave him alone as he was the sole target of the rebels. Finally, the rebels led by Muhammad bin Abu Bakr approached the caliph at the time of the azan for Friday prayer. They attacked him with a sword and blood from his forehead fell on the Quran he was reciting. His wife Naila lost 2 of her fingers while saving the caliph. B. Hazrat Umar stuck to his decisions despite being threatened by Firoz Abu Lulu as he thought he was right in refusing to interfere with the financial matters between a slave and his master. This teaches that the subjects of a just ruler may have a personal grudge against him or misjudge his decisions, but that should not shake their determination. If he is sure that he is righteous, he should refer the matter to God as is declared in the Quran, for to God go all matters for decision. 3:109, Al-Imran. Hazrat Uthman was martyred by rebels who considered his policies wrong. He was accused of favoritism, but his governors, who were his relatives, proved their competence by expanding the Muslim empire tremendously. Muslim rulers should keep their intentions pure, and prefer merit and talent of the state officials regardless of their relationship with the head of state. 4a. Write about the following. The benefits of private prayer, dua, in a Muslim's life. The times when God is thought most likely to accept dua. 10. B. How does dua bring a believer closer to God? 4. A. The benefits of dua in a Muslim's life. Dua or personal invocation is in a way continuation of the regular prayer salat. It is an informal act of worship as the believers may ask for anything from their Lord in any language. The Prophet highlighted the importance of dua by saying, "Dua is the core of worship." As salat contains fixed kinds of recitations, dua provides the believers an opportunity to ask from their Lord more of His favors and blessings for themselves as well as for their relatives and friends. Dua is a source of promoting humbleness, an attribute much liked by God. The Quran, in this regard says, believers will surely win through those who humble themselves in their prayer. 23:1-2, Al-Mu'minun. An additional benefit of being humble is that it negates pride as stated in this hadith. He in whose heart is as much pride as the size of mustard grain will not enter paradise. While invoking God's mercy in dua, a believer's concentration span improves and his bond with God Almighty is further strengthened. It is an effective tool of enhancing dependence on God instead of worldly powers. The time when God is thought most likely to accept dua. Sajda is among the most admired postures in the sight of God. Accordingly, the Prophet assured his followers, a slave becomes nearest to his Lord when he is in prostration. According to many ahadith of the Prophet, there are certain occasions when dua is most likely to be granted. Some moments late in night, and the last third of the night are believed to be among such occasions. A hadith Qudsi says, when it is the last third of the night, our Lord descends to the heaven of the world and says, "Is there anyone who invokes me, that I may respond to his invocation?" The dua after hearing the adhan and the declaration of Iqama is also likely to be granted as stated in this hadith. The supplication made between the adhan and Iqama is not rejected. Ultimately, sajda is among the most admired postures in the sight of God. Accordingly, the Prophet assured his followers, a slave becomes nearest to his Lord when he is in prostration. So increase supplication while prostrating. Sahih Muslim. Similarly, Hazrat Aisha reported, the Prophet used to strive hard, in worship, in the last 10 nights of Ramadan as he never did at any other time. So, the believers try to locate that precious moments of acceptance of du'a during the last 10 days of the holy month. According to Sahih Bukhari, whenever the Prophet saw the rain, he would invoke God's mercy. A believer's du'a for his child while traveling and while facing injustice is also thought to be granted as declared by the Prophet. 3 supplications are accepted: the supplication of the oppressed, the supplication of the traveler, and the supplication of a father for his son. A Muslim who visits a fellow sick Muslim and prays for his recovery, or during his own sickness, has more chances of his du'a being granted. Similarly, a Muslim's du'a in a state of fasting, during Ramadan or other months, and offering nafil prayer is believed to be granted by God. Du'a of the pilgrims begging God's mercy and forgiveness on the day of Arafat. 9. Dhul-Hajj is valued by God. A Muslim, making a du'a while seeing the holy Kaaba for the first time in his life, has chances of it getting it granted. There are many holy sites in and around the Kaaba where a Muslim can hope for the granting of du'a. They include Hatim, Multazim, the space between the Black Stone and the gate of the Kaaba, Maqam Ibrahim, and Mataf, the place of Tawaf. B. While making a du'a, a believer develops a sense of being close to God as he reassures himself of God's positive response to his begging as mentioned in the Quran, and your Lord says, "Call upon me, I will respond to you." 40:60, Ghafir. While making du'a, a believer's belief in Tawhid is strengthened, and that also brings him closer to his Lord. A Muslim opens his heart to God, exposes all his problems to him, and becomes a humble beggar before him, though he believes that God already knows the secrets of hearts. Thus he reminds himself of his status before the Lord of the worlds. He has a strong faith that God is in possession of uncountable bounties and unusual powers. Therefore, he develops confidence and pride in being his slave whose sole duty is to adore and worship him. 5. A. Describe how Muslims observe the fast of Ramadan and how this month should be spent. 10. B. What is the purpose of fasting during the month of Ramadan? 4. A. Sawm, fasting, is the 4th pillar of Islam. It was made obligatory in the 2nd year of Hijrah by the Quranic injunction, "O, you who believe, fasting is prescribed to you as it was prescribed to those before you, so that you may learn self-restraint." 2:183, Al-Baqarah. Sawm literally means to abstain, or practice self-restraint. In Islamic terminology, it means to spend the day without food, drink, sexual intercourse, and smoking. All healthy and grown-up Muslims are required to fast in the month of Ramadan, 9th month of the Islamic calendar. The Holy Quran says, "So whosoever of you lives to see this month, Ramadan, should fast throughout it." 2:185, Al-Baqarah. The fast is observed from the beginning of the day, just before the break of dawn, till sunset. The time for beginning the fast has been stated in the Quran: "Eat and drink until you can discern the white streak of dawn from the blackness of night, and then continue fasting until nightfall." 2:187, Al-Baqarah. This is in fact the time after which the time of Fajr prayer begins. Prior to this, a meal is taken, sehri, so one may have some nutrition as the entire day is to be spent without food. The Messenger of God said that the Ummah would be secure from trials as long as they continue eating until the last permissible moment. The fasting person makes this intention: "I intend to keep tomorrow's fast of Ramadan." During the fast, extraordinary care is taken to observe God's commandments, such as offering the daily prayers, and abstaining from shameful deeds. Scholars have titled the fast of Ramadan as the annual refresher course for the Muslims. As the reward for good deeds multiplies manifold, Muslims perform many additional acts of worship, such as offering nafil salat, distributing charity, and recitation of the Holy Quran. The Holy Prophet instructed that sehri be taken up to the last permissible moment and no delays should occur in the breaking of the fast once the sun has set. When the sun sets, the fast is broken by reciting, "O God, I fasted for you, believe in you, trust in you, and broke my fast with your bounty, sustenance." After the Isha prayer, fard, men, and women also if they so desire, gather to offer the Taraweeh prayer in congregation in the mosque. The object of the Taraweeh is to recite a large portion of the Quran daily, and thus complete at least one full recitation in this holy month. It may be offered in Nafil congregation with 8 or 20 rakats. Ramadan is a blessed month in which the believers try to perform as many good deeds as they can, and try to avoid all sins. They should avoid anger or aggression. Even if someone tries to provoke a believer, he should simply say that he is fasting and avoid confrontation. Muslims make special observance during the last 10 days of the holy month. They try to find the night of power during the last 5 odd nights of Ramadan. They spend these nights in offering Nafil prayer, recitation of the Quran and watching special programs on TV. Some Muslims also observe i'tikaf or retreat from social life during the last 10 days of Ramadan. The entire Muslim community performs the month-long spiritual exercise of Ramadan collectively. Muslims strive in this month to curb all detrimental desires and evil thoughts, and nurture love, patience, unselfishness, and social consciousness. The Prophet declared the act of fasting as a barrier against undesirable acts. Fast is a shield against sins. In Islamic culture, Ramadan is greeted with great zeal and zest. Muslims make special efforts to spend as much time as possible in worship, charity, and other good deeds in order to seek the pleasure of God, as the reward for good deeds increases manifold in this holy month. The purpose of the entire exercise is to revitalize faith, develop good habits, and renew the covenant with God. The spiritual purification of the individuals leads to the collective betterment of the entire community. The Messenger of God said, "God does not need the fast of one who does not abandon false speech or acting according to his false speech." Thus Ramadan acts as a spiritual cleanser not only for the individual believer but the entire community. B. The basic purpose of fasting is to inculcate genuine fear of God, as is stated in 2:183, Al-Baqarah. This fear of God or taqwa is the basis of shaping the conduct of the believers. They submit before the will of God by observing all restrictions for a fixed period of time. They develop unity and equality by obeying God's commands collectively. Fasting also fosters brotherhood and discipline among Muslims as they reschedule daily chores of life according to suha and iftar timing. The Taraweeh prayer and observances of the last 10 days of Ramadan further strengthen communal ties. They try to get closer to God by offering Nafil prayers and reciting the Quran and helping the poor. A hadith promises reward of such deeds. Whoever prays during the night in Ramadan out of sincere faith and seeking its reward from God, will have all his previous sins forgiven. Agreed upon.